So we will go ahead and get started. I wanted to, and I'm sure there'll be several more joining us as we go along here, but wanted to welcome everybody. We've had like I was mentioning to some of the early birds, we've had a really good a response to this particular live coaching topic, how to use small groups or the power of small groups in 2021. So I want to thank you all here, and there are more and more joining as I talk. So that's wonderful. By the way, all this material, whether it be the slides or examples that I show during the meeting, or some action items, or anything, we will be actually this entire video will be coming to you after the meeting. Within a couple of days after the meeting, you should have it, and so if you miss something, or if you're trying to take notes and think you missed something, you'll be able to get this later. My name is Josh Davis. I know several of you on here. I'm looking over here at the right and see some of the folks that have signed up, but several of you I have not had the pleasure of meeting. I work with Zach Clark. I've been coaching under Zach for, oh gosh, it's over 2 years now, and was coached by Zach for almost 3 years when I was director of development at a private Christian school here in Memphis. And and so Zach and I have been together for a long time. I just realized that. Currently, I'm working with 18 different Christian schools and our Christian ministries all across the country, from Massachusetts all the way to California and everything in between. So I just got off left a meeting just a few minutes ago with a Christian school down in Alabama. So very huge blessing for me to be able to work with so many great leaders and so many great organizations. It's such a just really wonderful that I can see how God works in so many different ways all across the country and then all across the world through your different organizations. All of you are doing great work, and it's a huge honor and blessing and pleasure for me to be just a small part of it. So now that's what I do. This is what I do full time, is work with Zach. So and he has allowed me to do some of these live coachings and to do some other things with him as well. So it's very honored to do that. Wanted to give what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick update on Zach, because I know most of you are probably wondering about that and have been following his saga, and have been, more importantly, have been praying for him, and he appreciates that, and I appreciate that very much as well. So I want to give you a quick update on him, and then I will open us up in prayer, and then I'll kind of go through our agenda today. And I promise to have you out of here at the latest at 1 o'clock, maybe a few minutes before, but at the very latest. If I have to stop in mid-sentence, I'll have you out of here at 1 o'clock. So, but anyway, Zach is doing really well. As most of you know, he had a pretty big battle with COVID just a short time ago, and was in the hospital for a little while, but he's getting better every day. He's back working almost. Now he's working full time for the average human being. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Zach's schedule. He works a lot. He's not quite back to the Zach Clark full time schedule, but he's working every day, and things are going well. It's still not 100% as far as getting energy levels back up, but he's out walking and starting to jog a little bit, I think. So he's on the road to recovery, and we really all do appreciate. He especially appreciates, but we all do appreciate the prayers and the offers to help, and all the different ways that many of you reached out during the last few weeks to make sure that to check in on Zach. So we appreciate that. So with that said, let me open us up in prayer, and then we will dive into the material today. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you, Father, and we are so thankful that you have taken our brother Zach through this period of time. But Father, now you have got him on the other side of it, and that he's starting to get better. We pray for him, Father, that in just a short period of time, he will be 100% and will feel just like he did before all this happened. So we pray for that, Father. Father, just so thankful for all those that would take time to join this meeting today to discuss the power of small groups. Father, I pray that you would give me wisdom and give me the right things to say to them. And then, Father, I pray that everybody in here, Father, would be able to take away information that will help them grow giving through small groups here in 2021. Father, just pray that we would use this time wisely and lift this prayer up in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so how are we going to use our time today? Well, as you all know, the topic that we're going to be discussing is the power of small groups in 2021. And so that's what we'll spend our time talking about. We will go through a couple of different uh, uh, ways to do that. The first way is one that not a lot of people think about, but it is a very, very powerful way to use small groups. And that's through the use of task forces and advisory councils. So task forces and advisory councils. In other words, bringing together groups of people that can help add capacity to what you're doing, primarily in development, but also in a myriad of other areas as well. So there's three different approaches that we teach, and we'll go through all three of those. So task forces and advisory councils will be our first thing we'll cover. Then after that, we'll get into small group events. That's kind of what most people think about when they think about the power of small groups, and it is very, very important, but it is just one important way to attack this subject. So we'll talk about what kind of small group events to have. There are a couple of different approaches there. What to do at a small group, how to get people to come to a small group event, and if you know Zach or me well, or any of our coaches at Development and Leadership Coaching, you probably know what I'm about to say, how to follow up, which is a huge thing for us, and hopefully a huge thing for you as well, how to follow up to a small group event. And so we will also cover all that as well. Along the way, if you have any questions at all, just use the chat feature down at the bottom of the bottom of your screen there. And so if you think of a question while I'm talking, feel free to type it in then. If you want to wait till the end, I want to try to keep about 15 or so minutes at the end for question and answer. By the way, I may just pop in and call on somebody. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but there's a few you on here that I know well enough that I think I can do that too. But if you don't want to be called on, the best way to do it would be ask a question in the chat box down there, and then we will dive into the questions towards the end. Wanted to go over one other thing with you before we get started. Let me share the screen. Yeah, wanted to let you know that, and I will put this information back up at the end of our meeting today, but we do have a waiting pool for launching new coaching projects here in 2021. You can go to developmentleadership.org and get more information about that. Also, after this meeting, when you'll get an email that will have all the document examples that I use today. You'll get an email that will have, that email will also have action items that I'm recommending that you take out of this meeting today. And then also Erica will include a link if you would like to set up a meeting, or she's put her email there actually, if you'd like to set up a meeting with me later on to discuss this or anything else as it relates to development and leadership coaching. There's my email. Feel free to reach out to me directly. There is Zach's email. Feel free to reach out directly, or there is our phone number. Call that. By the way, if you would like to receive, for the most part, weekly, almost every week, texts from Zach, you can text that mobile number right there, and you will be put on that list. By the way, that is Zach's actual phone number, so you will be talking to him, and when you get a reply, it's from him. So yeah, feel free to. A lot of people, I get the weekly text from Zach, and they always seem to be, especially when I was being coached by Zach. Anytime something was heavy on my mind. I went, man, how did he know that? Because it seemed like it was always a pertinent topic he was discussing that day. So once again, all that information will be back up on your screen when we toward the end of the meeting. So, okay, yeah, got a nice group here, 27 so far. So good to see everybody. So one thing I wanted to point out before we dive directly into small groups, whether they be task forces or whether they be advisory groups or whether it be small group events, is to say this is a very, very important part of your strategy for raising money. It is not the most important though. Sometimes we can get into a subject like this and we can start getting in our mind, well, gosh, maybe I need to be doing more of this and less of face-to-face. No, the way we teach it, and this is can be it's not just because we teach it this way, it's been proven to work out this way. There are three significant ways to raise money. Face-to-face development, one-on-one, sitting across the table from another person that can make a big difference in your ministry, has been, is now, and probably forever will be the best way to raise significant dollars. It is not the only way, however. So small groups, which we're going to talk about today, is the second best way to do it. It helps expand your capacity. It helps you get in front of more people, obviously. It helps you bring people alongside you to help expand your capacity. But it is not there to replace your face-to-face development. The third best way to raise money is through a large group strategy, which would be your year-end mailers, or if you happen to have a big banquet, things like that. Those are all good and effective ways, but that is the third most. So it's just remember this, if you need to write it down, it's face-to-face first, small group second, large group third. Always in that order: face-to-face, small group, large group. And the reason I'm taking time out to emphasize that is it's a tendency of a leader to, when we start talking about small group strategies, to go, oh wow, that seems more effective because I can get in front of 6, 8, 10, or 12 people at once instead of just sitting down in front of one person. And it does seem that way. But just another principle to keep in mind, usually when it comes to development work, the most inefficient ways are also the most lucrative. For instance, right after this meeting's over, you could go to your email and hit ask 1,000 people for money. That's real efficient. You get that message out to 1,000 people and all you did was bam, punch a button. You won't get many donations. You'll get a few, but you won't get many. It would be highly unlikely you'd get any large donations that way. But sitting down in front of a person, one-on-one, face-to-face, over a period of time, that's what will lead to your largest donors. Sort of the in-between step there is what we're going to talk about today, is small groups. Small groups are very powerful. I can give you story after story after story of just remarkable things that the basis where it started was in a small group meeting. But just wanted to point that out before we move along. So the first thing I wanted to mention this time would be to talk about the use of task forces and advisory councils. Task forces and advisory councils. And so we will get into the difference between those two, but there are three different approaches that we recommend. First and foremost would be, we think every ministry, every Christian school, pretty much if you're in a nonprofit, but anybody should have a development task force. A development task force. Now, what exactly is a development task force? That would be a group of people that are probably already givers to your ministry or your Christian school, high capacity people, people that are the types that get things done, that probably involved in the community. Probably if you could talk yourself out of even asking them to help you, because you'd probably go, that person's too busy. They're too busy. They're just not going to be able to help me because they're too busy. That's exactly who you want on a development task force. They are there to help you meet people that can make a big difference in your ministry. That's one of the things they're there for. So typically, it's funny. I talk to leaders when this subject comes up. Again, it's kind of like the natural tendency is to want to do small group and have that supplant your face-to-face efforts. Another tendency when it comes to asking people to be on a development task force is to say, well, I need to go find somebody that's not doing anything. That's the people that aren't doing anything usually are doing exactly what they want to do, not do anything. I'm not putting down people that are not doing anything. I hope to be one day. I hope to get to the point where I'm somebody that can just not do anything. But for a development task force that is going to move your ministry or your Christian school forward, you really need to find busy, effective, connected folks. Now, next question there usually is, so how many do you need, and what do you once you find them, what do you do? Well, those are good questions. As far as how many, I personally believe that if you get three or more, once you have three of the right people, you can go ahead and have your first development task force meeting. It doesn't have to be a big group. You don't want it to be a big group. I've always said I would much rather have the three right people than three right people and two wrong folks that just aren't a good fit. So as few as three, as many as nine, I would say. If anything more than nine, you're getting into a situation where you're going to spin your wheels a lot, just trying to listen to all the different opinions, introduce everybody at the beginning of every meeting. I'm sure all of you as leaders have been in the situation where you put together a committee and you just realize later, man, we got too many people in this committee. We'd be much rather with 5 or 6 really connected folks instead of too many. So anywhere between 3 and 9, highly effective, busy people, typically givers, and the type of folks that like to get things done. It will take you many times. It will take you a little time to find those right people. So we're not recommending. We do recommend that every ministry and every Christian school have have one of these, a development task force. But we're not saying you just kind of go throw it together real quick. Take your time, find the right people. When you get 3 or more, you're ready to get started, and go from there. But we do believe that it's something that can help you tremendously. If I hear, I'm coaching with 18 different organizations, if there's one common thread that between all of them is the leader feels that they're being pulled in 100 different directions every day. If you're a head of school at a Christian school, there's since I used to work at a Christian school, I know that. I mean, you walk in every day and there's every day something happens that you couldn't have envisioned when you walked through the door that day. If you are the head of a ministry, I work with, and some of them are on here now, work with different ministries. There's always, as a leader, you're going to be pulled in different directions. And so the common thing is, if I just had more help, if I just could get more help, but we don't have right now the budget to just go out and hire people. And matter of fact, even if you have the budgets, that's usually not a good idea. Sometimes it's a good idea, but sometimes it isn't. This is what a development task force will help you do, help expand your capacity. So I'm going to share the screen that'll give you kind of a example role of what a development task force does. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, all these documents will be sending to you via email. But this is the role of a development task force, and of course you can see that there. I guess I should ask, is everybody seeing that okay? You can just say yes in the Q&A. Um, okay, good. Thank you, Athena and Tom and Angel. Appreciate that. Um, so, um, so development task force, small group of people who are serving faithfully to serve your ministry and help shape the strategic future, engage other people who have the potential to give significantly to impact a vision for your ministry. One thing that Zach and I and our other coaches, by the way, we have Zach coaches, I coach, and we have three other, one, two, actually four other coaches that are working with us right now. But one thing that we all hear a lot is that I feel like I've either that I don't know enough people to really go out and find these significant gifts, or I feel like we've kind of gotten to the end of our rope, so to speak. Well, that's one area where development task force can really help you. They can help you, quote, find these other people. So somebody, I believe it was Tom, just put up a question, just said, how often does a development task force meet? A development task force will meet at least 2 to 6 times a year. The most typical um, thing is to meet quarterly, once every quarter. But if you're having maybe about to go into a big campaign, you might want to up that to 6 times a year. If you're going through a less turbulent time, you may want to. Is there ever less turbulent times? Since March of 2020, I don't know if that exists anymore. But let's just say for kicks and giggles, you're going through a less turbulent time. You may only meet a couple times a year. So anytime, 2 to 6 times a year, you can meet face to face. That's the best, or virtually. I've had meetings where my phone is sitting in the middle of the table and two or three people are meeting via phone. Of course, now we've all gotten pretty proficient at Zoom, so you can meet via Zoom. But face to face, now that at least in a lot of parts of the country, we're kind of getting where we can do that. Um, uh, that's always preferable, but it's not the only way. If again, you're looking for busy people, so if they have to put it on the speakerphone in their car while they're going to another meeting, that's fine as well. And so what do you do at the meeting? So, or what is the job description probably? And so you can look down here and the development task force has a handful of significant priorities to support you with counsel and advice. That would be first and foremost. To identify potential donors, strategic partners for special opportunities that could profoundly impact the financial health and future success of your ministry. Again, big people, big ideas, looking for big wins. There are other task forces that you can put together for other things, but this, when your development task force, that's its primary goal. Secure face-to-face conversations with people that could give 10,000 and up. Hey, your ministry, you might say, hey, we need to start at 5. Another ministry might say, hey, I'm focused on 25 and up. That's just a random number there, but that's the point being, they can help you get in front of people that can make significant donations. To help you identify and recruit volunteers, and then to also be a sounding board, monitor your message, your strategy. Quite frankly, this is a great, if another common thread that we hear a lot in coaching is sometimes a frustration with the board. It'll be like, we just don't seem to have the right board members. Well, this is a great way to not only help your ministry, but to also find outstanding board members, because you get to see them in action before they actually, go on the board. So that's another benefit of a development task force. Um, so you will be getting action items about this. My email, or you can email Erica. We can set up a conversation to discuss this. But the bottom line is, if you don't get anything else out of this meeting today, we recommend that everybody, whether you're large, small, or in between, have a development task force that's helping you do these things. So also quickly, and I will share the screen with this also. So when you have these meetings 2 to 6 times a year, what do you talk about? And again, you will be getting this. There we go. Here's an example agenda. And it's nothing earth-shattering here. It's just kind of what you would normally go when you get a bunch of important people together that are going to help you. Open in prayer, discuss scorecard data. By the way, to those of you who are in the meeting that are being coached by Zach or me or some of the other coaches, probably already know, oh my gosh, he's talking about the weekly scorecard. So you can talk about that, the scorecard and things like that, your financial goals, your current goals. You talk about long-term 5-year goals, but hey, while we're working toward that, we have some milestones and other goals we're trying to get to along the way. And so you can look at that. And again, we will be sending this out. But this is just an example of how a development task force meeting should go. Okay, so past that, we also, and I'll just spend a short period of time on this. We also recommend the use of task forces and advisory councils, and I'll tell you the difference real quick. You as a ministry leader inevitably have areas that you could use. I mean, like, I'll just say this: marketing. A lot of people, they know their ministry, they know it inside and out. They do a really good job and everything, but they just have a blind spot for marketing. And there's nobody in their organization. So what you tend to see is a bunch of scattershot stuff going on. Well, hey, pulling together some like-minded people that love your ministry and that understand marketing and that can do some research for you is a great use of a task force. It could be something else. It could be volunteers. We really struggle with getting volunteers, and then when we get them, how to use them. But I'm so darned active every day running the ministry. I just haven't been able to take time to do a deep dive into how to do that. A task force on volunteers would be a great subject. There are a myriad of things out there: website design, public relations. A lot of this is all about, that type of stuff, but they're not permanent committees. They're ones that come in and say, okay, we want to, we're really struggling getting our website up to date. I need some people to help me with that. Here's 2 or 3 people that are been donors, and they've 2 or 3 of them been donors, and they've brought along a friend that's really proficient in that. And they're going to come in and spend maybe 6 months trying to help us figure out how to get our website up to date. So anyway, that's the task force. Now, advisory councils, and I'll just very briefly on that. That's usually maybe even a step back from a task force. So now, like I mentioned, a task force will meet most of the time quarterly, but maybe even much as 6 times a year, as few as 2. Advisory councils are probably going to meet only 2 times a year. Christian schools seem to get a lot of traction with advisory councils. Like a grandparent advisory council usually is effective at a Christian school. Grandparents want a way to be involved, but maybe they don't want to have to show up to several meetings a year, but they would like to have their voice heard. That's a good use of advisory council. But whether you're a Christian school or our Christian ministry, there are different ways to use advisory councils. But as you're working on this, I would focus on, if you don't already have one, development council first. Development task force first. Uh, any other task force, after you get that done, make sure you get that done right. Then think about any other task force you might need, marketing, volunteerism, whatever. And then after you kind of get that down, say, well, how could we draw in other people that would give us some great advice, but maybe we don't want to have, don't need them to help us with a specific task. We just need to hear from them. And think that through, and the use of all three of those can be very, very helpful, and help you grow your ministry. And that's the whole reason we're all here. So anyway, once again, you'll be getting those examples and some action items from me after the meeting's over sometime, and within a few days. Erica will send those out. And if you have any other further questions, we'll have time at the end of this particular meeting to ask them. And you can set up a meeting with me, or you can get email us, either way, and we'll be happy to answer those. So that's all about task forces and advisory councils. Now I want to talk to you about events, a small group event approach. And basically, we have two different approaches that we coach there as well, and both are very, very effective. The first one would be a vision event. The second would be a leadership briefing. So vision events, number one, leadership briefings, number two. They're really not one and two, they're just both and. Both are important. So we'll probably spend most of our time here discussing vision events, because that's probably be where you will have the most questions, and I will be sharing some slides on that as well. So what is a vision event? Well, let me give you one thing that it's not. It is not a fundraising event. So a vision event is not a fundraising event. Now you're probably sitting there scratching your head going, well, we want to raise more money at these things. Why? What do we do? Well, I'm about to tell you. So if it's a small group event and it gets people together and it's called a vision event and it's not a fundraising event, what is it? So what it is a way to get together people in a small group setting and explain to them or show them what the vision of your ministry. Okay, I just saw a couple of questions. Okay, never mind. That's a little technical thing there. But so to share the vision of your ministry, to tell them the story of what God has done, what is your vision, what is your mission, what are your core values, what are you working on, and why is it so important? And while this is not a fundraising event, we're not going to lock the door and hand you a pledge card. Have you ever been to one of those where they've done that before? By the way, if you want to have a good way to raise a bunch of $25 gifts, do that. You can get 10 people in a room after the meeting, lock the door, hand them a pledge card, and they'll be embarrassed and they'll all give you $25, and then they'll go, I'm never going back to one of those again. But if you're looking to raise significant dollars, we don't recommend you do that. So yeah, they're not fundraising events. We even say that if you have to go as far as telling people in the invitation, this is not a fundraising event, that would be, that's okay. So if they're not fundraising events, what do you do? Well, like I said, tell them about your vision, mission, core values, why this is important ministry. And you can explain to them why and how you ask for money. Not going to ask you for money today, but why do we ask for money? How do we ask for money? And so they will be armed with that information moving forward. I think the best way for me to show this to you would be to kind of go through an example of presentation, which I will share on the screen. If I can find it here. There we go. So, what would you do at a vision event? Now, a lot of people ask me all the time about this. How many people should come to one of these? I have found the ideal number to be somewhere between 8 and 12. If you get much more than 12, they kind of lose that small group feel. I mean, I've done these before where I've had 22 or 24 show up, and you didn't get around to talk to everybody. It kind of became almost like you were moving people in and just moving them right back out. It just lost its personal touch that you're looking for. A really good chance to get to meet these folks and to have them ask questions of not only of you as the leader of the ministry. But I always tell this story. The very first one of these that I ever did, I got the head of school to come. I got a board member to come, and like 3 people showed up. And I mean, I was so humiliated. And but out of that, um, uh, one gentleman who was brand new to the school, just had put his child there, comes up, and we ended up having about a 15-minute conversation. Then he asked me, can we go to lunch someday? I'd like to learn more. Now, usually I'm talking to leaders going, oh, I'm having trouble getting meetings. I mean, he said it to me, you want to go meet? Anyway, long story short, in not a particularly long period of time, is just about within the month, he made like a $10,000 gift. Brand new money, as they say, had never donated before. So the reason I say all that is, if only 4 people show up, if it's the right 4, you can have a lot of impact. So anyway, and I'll run through this quickly because, like I said, we'll send it to you. But you can see this is from a Christian school called the Rock School. And they just, again, go through the history of their school, explain to people where God has shown up in the past, explain what their vision is for the people they impact. By the way, anytime you talk to somebody about your ministry, try to avoid the temptation to talk about your projects, unless that's something they specifically ask about. Talk about how you're impacting, how you're either changing or saving a life. That's, at the end of the day, that's what a vast majority of people want to know, is how are you changing a life or saving a life? And then you go through the highlights of your ministry, what kind of impact you are having. Great pictures of the people that you are ministering to. Some of you have great pictures. Pictures are very powerful. And so you see here several examples of that. And then, why is this important? Each one of you have a unique way that you can tell the people why is this Christian school important? Why is this Christian ministry important? Why is this international ministry important? Why is this ministry that teaches, that works with kids playing basketball in the inner city important? Why is this ministry that's international, works with the deaf in third world countries? Why is it so important? And you all have very compelling stories and reasons. So to explain to the folks that show up, the importance of what you do. Talk about the future impact. And that's, again, we'll send you all this, but this particular school is going through kind of what's distinctive about it: distinctively Christian, community of grace, responsive, forward thinking. All of you have different stories and different things like this that you can use for your ministry. And what's so nice is, once you get this down, it's very easy to do these. You don't have to go in with a bunch of prepared notes and all that kind of stuff. You can just start going through the slides, and as soon as you see the next slide, you know exactly what to talk about. So then you get to the point where you say, okay, so now, because of our vision, mission, why this is so important, the impact we're having, what are we doing going forward? What is our strategy moving forward? And so you talk about just, your strategic priorities. And then you get into, okay, so vision, mission, core values, strategic priorities. How is it going to be funded? Well, they show you here, and this is a Christian school, but just take it and use it for your ministry as well. They're going to build a gymnasium for $1 million, preschool facility for $500,000, and another expansion. So they go right through here the steps and the dollar amounts that it's going to take to move their ministry, move this Christian school forward. Then how's it all going to get funded? Well, that you can see they're looking to raise $810,000. That's probably their goal for the current year they're in. How are they going to do that? It's going to take giving at all these different levels. Now, again, not a fundraiser. We're not locking the door and asking you to do anything, but we are showing you, we're informing you, we're letting you know how and why, and we ask for money because you will be getting information about this later, and we want you to know about it. And I need to move along quickly, so we will just then, what do we ask you to do? Think and pray about the ministry. Be open to our phone call when we call you later. Maybe take, we will be sending you some information. Please take a look at it, things like that. So let me do this next part. I'll just share with you some different things that you can use. So we went through the presentation. Invitation, we recommend, and by the way, we're going to send you some sample invitations, sample follow-up invitations. But here's one thing I want you to hear. And this is why it's really important to help get some volunteers to help you if you can. If all you do is send them a paper invitation and then just sit back and wait, you're going to be sitting back and waiting for quite a while. That is just the first step of an invitation process. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. It takes a little bit of work to get people to come to these. If you have somebody that's willing to host it for you and then also step out there and take care of the invitations, that's great. That's wonderful. Sometimes though, you don't always have that. So they need to get a paper invitation in the mail. That needs to be followed up with by an email a few days later. In the email, it can maybe have a link to an Eventbrite type thing that you've set up where they can actually RSVP, but they can also call an RSVP or email an RSVP. My experience has been if you send them that Eventbrite link, most will use that. Not all, but most will. That was at least the way it's worked out for me. And then a phone call. They need to hear from you that, but if they get something in the mail, a follow-up email, and then a phone call, they may not know anything else, but they're going to know this. This is important. This isn't just something that you dropped in the mail and went on about your business. You really do want them to show up to this small group event because it's important that they know about your ministry and what you're doing. Again, volunteers are great there. If a host will do that for you, that's great. But it will take whoever's doing it. It's going to take a kind of a 3-step process to sure you're going to get people to come. Very quickly, so we've talked about vision events, leadership briefings. What's the difference between a vision event and a leadership briefing? Leadership briefings are small group events specifically for your regular donors, people that have made long-term giving commitments to your ministry, monthly donors. I see that all the time. Ministries will do this great job of getting a lot of monthly donors, and then they just kind of treat them like second-class citizens because they kind of feel, well, we're looking for new donors. And then they wonder why that monthly donor that had been given $100 a month for 5 years all of a sudden left them, and they can't get them back on the phone. A lot of times they got ignored for 5 years. A leadership briefing is a great way to to keep them in the fold. It's the type, your regular donors that give every year, maybe they haven't made a commitment. But here's the deal. If you can get as many as possible, your monthly donors, your donors that have made long-term giving commitments, and or your larger regular donors to like once every 2 or 3 years come to one of these, they will feel very well informed and very well appreciated, and it becomes much less likely that you're going to lose them. If you've heard Zach or me or any of our other coaches talk, we preach it all the time. If you're ever confused about what to do next in development, working on your retaining the donors you already have is a really, really important thing to do. So with that said, let me pull this back up and see what kind of questions we have here. We've got a few here. So one was, and so yeah, now would be the time. If you do it, you can either use that chat box or you can use that Q&A box down there. One I think I mentioned earlier, Tom had asked, how often should a task force meet? And just to reiterate, quarterly is the most common way there. But the other ways would be, but you might want to meet more if you have a particularly, trying time. Maybe you're starting a capital campaign and you feel like you need to meet more often. So you might want to meet 6 times a year. The bottom line is you want people to understand that while this is really important, and yes, they're going to be asked to be talking about the development task force to help. We're not going to meeting you to death. Where it's not like we're going to have you come in twice a month or even once a month. But when we do have a meeting, it will be important, and basically what you can do for us in between the meetings too will be important. But anyway, 2, 4, or 6 times a year would be the most. Let's see what else we got here. So other questions. What else does anybody have out there? You can either put it in the chat box or you can go through the Q&A. And I'll have to call on somebody if I don't get a question here in a minute. So if you don't want to be called on, let's see here. Who can I pick on? Now everybody's going to drop off that I say I'm going to pick on somebody. How about Nicole? Hello, Nicole. How are you? Can you hear me? I see your name up there, but I'm not hearing your voice. Wonder if this isn't. Maybe I overstepped my technical abilities here. Well, anyway, Nicole, I can't hear you, so I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'll undo that. Hold on, just a second here while I get that. I may have run her off, to be honest with you. There we go. Okay, so well, I can tell you though, we have a few questions in the Q&A. Sorry about that. I was trying to embarrass Nicole, and Tom is asking again. Thanks, Tom, for the question. Nicole's saying my computer would not allow me to unmute anyway. Tom's asking, is it wise to invite someone to our task force if they are not currently an active sponsor? Or I guess you're talking about like an active donor. Tom, my answer to that would be if they, if you're talking about your development task force, I would probably be a little bit, probably wouldn't do that unless there's always exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, I would want somebody that's already donating, already active. Now, if you're talking about another type of task force, like let's say we've used the example of marketing. Let's say you really feel like you need to make ICCD's website better, or maybe a social media is a big one. Gosh, we just don't have a good social media strategy, and I don't know how to get one. You can uh, bring in. So in other words, as a matter of fact, it's probably common to say, well, we know two or maybe one or two people in our community that are really, up on social media and could help us do that. But maybe they know a couple of people. Well, yeah, they may know a few people that don't know anything about your ministry, but are Christians and can add capacity and would love to help. So if it's a task force that's not the development task force and or an advisory council, yes, people that are not currently connected is fine. I mean, we've heard through the years tremendous things happen through a task force, like somebody put together a task force on a specific subject. They started with a few people that are already connected to the ministry. Those few people knew a few people. And anyway, somebody that didn't know that ministry existed ended up coming on the task force and helping them just do a lot of great things. So that would be the answer to that. Probably not on your development task force, though. Okay, anything else? Well, if not, I'm not going to try that other thing I tried there just a minute ago. So yeah, you're thinking about somebody who's wealthy that's connected in the community. Okay, good question from Nancy. When and how often do you schedule vision events, leadership briefings? I'll start with leadership briefings first. And of course, again, it depends on the size of your ministry and things like that. But typically speaking, vision leadership briefings, probably 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe one in the spring, summer, fall type thing. It might be wise to avoid late in the year when people are so busy with Christmas events and things like that. But 2 or 3 times a year. And another thing, Nancy, and you will see this when you get the examples after emailed to you afterwards. Giving them, say, like you could say, we're going to have some leadership briefings in March, and then giving people 2 or 3 different options. Say we're going to have one, we're going to have a breakfast leadership briefing one day, a lunch one, and then maybe an early evening one the next, and giving people the options to pick the ones they want to choose. So leadership briefings probably 3 times a year. The goal again is to get all your large regular donors, all your monthly donors, all your donors that have made long-term giving commitments. Give them at least the opportunity to come to one of those. If you can get all of them in there once every 2 or 3 years, you've done a great job. You don't have to. Some that just love to go to meetings, sure, they might show up every year, but most once every 2 or 3 years would be fine. On the leadership briefing. On the vision events, that's a little more difficult to answer because a lot of it has to do with where you are. Let's just take a Christian school, for example. If you're about to embark on a capital campaign, something new, you'd probably want to have a series of vision events almost every month of the year. And again, using that same formula, giving people the option to come to a morning one day or a lunch the next or early evening the next. If you're not embarking on a particularly new and maybe 4 to 6 a year, 4 to 6 clusters of them a year would be good. It really just kind of depends on what's going on there at your ministry. I know Zach told me one time when he was coaching me uh, that when they were really in the critical part of their campaign there at Westminster Christian, they were just having these vision events, just multiple vision events every month. So it kind of depends on where you are as far as how many. But that's a great question. I appreciate that. I'm going to share the screen with one more thing here. I really do appreciate, Zach and I both appreciate everybody that took the time to come today. And like I said, I will get you out of here by 1 o'clock at the latest. And that's not what I wanted. There we go. Wanted to remind you that we are next steps. We've got a waiting pool for launching new coaching projects in 2021, working with about over 40 organizations now all across the country, and having just, it's a blessing. I'm not trying to say God is using those meetings, put it to you that way, to really cause a lot of impact in a positive way for these different ministries across the country. So we're talking to people every day, and we don't have just unlimited capacity. So if you are interested in that, we would love to hear from you. Erica will be emailing you to set up an individual meeting with me. So be looking out for that. If you want to, in the individual meeting can be about anything. We can talk about this. We can talk about coaching. We can talk about any challenge that you may be facing as a leader right now. So we'd love to talk to you. You can email me. There's my email. You can email Zach. You can call us. And if, again, I highly recommend that if you are not getting the almost weekly text from Zach, you can do that by texting that number 314-403-2561. So, and you'll be getting this slide as well when you get the email from us. So I promised to be done by 1 o'clock, and it looks like we are done at 12:57. So we really do. It's very humbling to me that so many would sign up, and then so many that signed up would take the time to meet today. I hope that you have found this time to be valuable. Like I said, any follow-up questions that you think of tonight or later on, feel free to email me. Feel free to set up a meeting with Erica. And if you're interested in coaching, feel free to reach out to us about that as well. And look, we got 2 minutes. One more question. Somebody just popped one in there. Somebody just told me, good job. Okay, well, I will take that and we will sign off on that. So get back to work. Let me know if you have any questions, and you all have a great day.